If you've been in the land of doom and gloom, well, hope springs eternal because drier air is on the way. We'll be taking a look at the short range, the weekend, the long range, the tropics, all of that. And who knows what else will spew out of our mouths here tonight on the Joe and Joe. Actually, you should say it, Joe. On the
Joe and Joe Weather Show.
And then you can say brought to you by
Brought to you by
Omni True Value Hardware at 1226 North Wellwood Avenue in West Babylon, New York. In Southwest Suffolk County on Long Island, serving the entire New York, New Jersey, Connecticut tri-state area. And we're one day closer to when you might need to clean up some snow and ice. And they are Long Island's largest provider of rock salt. And in fact, last year when there was a shortage in the Northeast of rock salt, people came from all over to get it from Omni because they were one of the few places that had it at a reasonable price. Also, still some leftover mulch and topsoil in case you're fixing up your yard and you want to make sure your home can stand up to any kind of adverse weather conditions with a new generator, or maybe you need batteries, flashlights, a new pump, whatever. 631-756-1125 for the best prices not only in town but anywhere. And the website is
OmniTrueValue.com. And Joe, I remember a few years ago during a long siege of snow and especially ice, I went down to a local hardware store in the Cortland Town Center to ask or to purchase a bag of salt, rock salt. And I went up to one of the people who was wearing the traditional red or orange apron at this particular outlet. And I said, "Excuse me, could you please tell me where the rock salt is?" And he looked at me straight in the eye and he said, "I could tell you where it was."
Nice. That was useful.
Yes. I wish Omni True Value was down the road for me back then. That's for sure.
Yeah, I hear you. Well, I look forward to those nights, as I discovered last winter, where it gets down below freezing and we get freezing fog around here and everything ices up, and that's always fun. So, and I actually bought at Walmart. I bought a container of ice melt, and I have it. My Northeast is showing. I have it sitting outside on my deck, ready to be used just in case, because it does get used around here. No, make no mistake. Welcome, everybody, to tonight's Joe and Joe Weather Show. And Ken Musillo is the first to hit the tip jar tonight, Joe Rayo. And we thank him very much indeed for doing that.
Thank you, Ken.
Those of you who are new to the Joe and Joe Weather Show, if you're watching tonight, welcome aboard. Join the conversation on the chat board. Sometimes it gets pretty interesting. And actually, a lot of times it gets pretty interesting. Subscribe to my YouTube channel with your Gmail account and set your notifications to on. This way, you are notified every time the Joe and Joe Weather Show is on, which is Monday through Thursday at 7:35, normally on Sundays at 11 a.m., but this Sunday we will be on at 7 p.m., and Fridays and Saturdays, Joe and I take off unless there's a big storm around, in case we would have a show. And Leon Probitsky hits the tip jar. Also, the
What's
super
noob?
chat. Yes. I don't know what
is. I have no clue what the acronym for noob is. Noob.
Yeah, I don't either. I have no idea. But we could always Google it and find out, I guess.
A person who is inexperienced in a particular sphere or activity, especially computing or the use of the internet. That is what a noob is.
Oh.
So there you go.
Well, we learn new things every day.
Or it can also be a slang, often pejorative, a noob or a newbie, referring to the idea that someone is new to the game, concept, or idea, implying a lack of experience. Also, in some areas, the word noob can mean someone who's obsessed with things. Noobs are annoying. They never know the forum rules.
Okay. Well,
all of that from one little word, right?
Exactly. And one syllable, too.
Yes.
We have have a cold front approaching from the west. And while that front was a bit busy yesterday with some showers and thunderstorms across parts of the south, I got some last night. Just some heavy downpours. The rain didn't really amount to much here because the area was falling apart, and it continued to fall apart today. Yes, there are some showers on the radar well up into the interior parts of the Northeast, but for the most part, Joe, from eastern Pennsylvania to southern New England, this front coming through dry, and it should usher in, I would say, at least 3, if not maybe 4 days of decent weather around these parts.
I would certainly agree. And I must tell you, last night, and this was pointed out by Renata, I do not have good hearing for high frequency sounds, especially. But last night, if you stepped outside, even as late as 11 o'clock, it sounded like a late August night around my house. Katydids, crickets, maybe a few peepers here and there, peep frogs. I mean, all sorts of, it was amazing. It was very much like what it sounds like in late summer. And here it is now, late October. And I got to thinking, last week I had 2 sub-freezing nights or early mornings with a touch of frost. And yet, all of these creatures that were outside last night managed to survive that, and now we're in their element. You could hear with every little chirp or peep or screech or whatever, how happy they were that they were in the midst of a spell of Indian summer, that the temperatures were well above where they should be. Normally at this time of the year, we mentioned yesterday here in the Hudson Valley, 35 to 40, at least up where I am. And last night, the temperatures were hard-pressed to get much below 65, even deep into the night. So tonight, it's not going to be quite as mild as what we had last night. And certainly, when we get to the upcoming next few nights, all those little creatures, all those little chiggers out there, I don't know what's going to happen to them, but it looks like they could be pretty well frozen by the start of the weekend, because temperatures are going to drop real quick. I think Friday night, Saturday morning around here will be probably down close to freezing. So I hope they enjoyed themselves last night, and maybe they'll have a little round tonight. But after tonight, I think they're going bye-bye with the much colder temperatures settling in.
Well, we had our cold front move through here early this morning, and today here in northeast Georgia, it didn't get out of the 50s. I'm already down in the mid-40s and dropping. There's still a bit of a wind out there, so I'm already into the cooler air that is coming in and the drier air, because skies, I think, have cleared out nicely. It's only the third time in that it's rained here since the first week of September. And once again, it was at night, and once again, it didn't amount to much. I don't think, Joe, if I put those last 3 rain events together, if it adds up to a quarter of an inch, I might actually even be pushing it from that standpoint. I mean, that's how this is the dry season across much of the South, so it's not it's not unusual to get these long, really long stretches of weather. I have to say, quite honestly, I've really enjoyed it. The sunny days, the nice nights have been great. The early cold, well, that's a different story, because I've already been down to 20. And I guess the only thing left for us to bet on, Joe, is whether you or I get we could bet on the first snow, or we could also bet on which of us makes it to the single digits first.
Yeah. Why do I get the feeling it's going to be you? Because more likely the cold air is going to come plunging down from central Canada through the Great Lakes and the Ohio Valley all the way straight down into your area, and then it kind of spreads out. But in the process of spreading out, it kind of moderates some. So you may get like down to 8 or 9, and when the cold finally hits me, I'll only get down to about 12 or 14. So
we'll see. Listen, if the deep troughs that we had during the month of October are going to be the signature pattern going forward when we get into later November and December, then yeah, I probably will beat you to teens and maybe single digits, and maybe the first snowfall of the season. But we'll find out in the fullness of time. Meanwhile, I'm going to I'll bring up the northeast satellite view, so we could take a look at this cold front that's approaching from the west, as Tom Grant would say, and get myself out of the screen so everybody can see what it looks like. And the ocean, by the way, they had Bill Huber messaged me this morning, one of our chat board regulars. He he drove out to Riverhead this morning. They had flooding rains last night. They had at least several inches of rain over the Twin Forks. And I did notice this morning when I woke up that the radar was still pretty active over southeastern New England. So some of that Atlantic moisture did manage to come in right along the coast, but most of it's accessed well offshore. And then you look to the west, starting to see clouds move from west to east, and that means all the low stuff gets out of the way. We can clean house once the whole front goes by, and we could start to see improving weather conditions with the dry air that's to the west.
Don't forget also that we mentioned last night that although all the severe weather was forecast for the deep south, that there was a little bit of a scallop of green over Long Island and part of southern New England, indicating that there could be some general thunderstorm activity. And you had mentioned that if that were going to be the case, it'd probably be for the latter part of the night. So it may very well have been, along with those showers, that bit of convection mixed in, and maybe some heard some rumbles of thunder out on the east end of Long Island last night, which was partially account for all of the heavy rain that fell.
And you can see the dry air that's moved into the western lakes and starting to move into the Ohio Valley, and also already here in the southeastern U.S. and across the Gulf states and back to Texas. A little bit of energy that's come into the Pacific Northwest is dropping into the excuse me, into the northern Rockies. That may be one of the next players in the weather, but it's probably going to take about 3 or 4 days for that next system to move across. So that's a plus. Here's the radar tonight, and still getting more rain and some heavy rain in eastern Maine. They've been kind of in the target zone for the last couple of weeks with these weather systems lined up the way they've been. And more rain this evening and also into New Brunswick. We've got some scattered showers and some, well, actually, I shouldn't say they're more than scattered showers, but got showers with some heavy downpours in northeastern New York, also moving through north central New York, mostly along and north of I-90, and some activity back on the Canada side around Toronto and moving in through lower Ontario and into Quebec. But other than that, Joe, the radar's quiet in the east. We've got some precip in Nebraska, rain, and also in southern South Dakota, a little bit of rain shower activity. And out further west, some patchy areas of snow in parts of Idaho and northern Utah, western Wyoming, and western Colorado, and some more rain moving into the Pacific Northwest.
And that shot of precipitation that's in here in the Northeast, passing, as Joe just mentioned, mostly just to the north of I mean, we had, where I am, we had a couple of spritzes or sprinkles or spits briefly in the late afternoon hours, but all of that now is lifting out to the north, and we should get into a clearing sky, particularly after 10 or 11 o'clock tonight, and that should lead us into a beautiful clear day tomorrow. Lots of sunshine, bit of a gusty breeze in the afternoon, maybe to over 20 miles per hour from the northwest. And Friday, not as pristine, if I may use that term, as what we're going to see tomorrow. I think we're going to see the Northeast covered under a veil of high cloud cover, but that's only going to last for about a day because that'll be out of here on Saturday. Probably upper 50s on Friday, a noticeable cool down from recent days, and then low 60s on Saturday. Sunday looks okay, Joe. I'm not, I looked at a few forecasts. I looked at the Weather Service. They're going for bright and sunny. I actually think that we may see a lot of clouds coming toward us from the west late in the day on Sunday, but showers should hold off until sometime late Sunday night. Somebody on the chat board, and I forgot who it was, commented or asked, does it look like it's going to be wet for the for Monday, which is of course Halloween? And from my vantage point, I think we might have a couple of showers early in the day on Monday, but I think the more widespread wet weather is going to be arriving Monday afternoon and Monday evening, which is unfortunate because that, of course, is the time when all the ghosts and goblins, all the trick or treaters will be out and about. And it looks like if they're going to be out and about, they better bring along an umbrella because methinks they're going to need it on Monday afternoon and Monday evening.
I wanted to bring this up the last couple of nights and I forgot. As you mentioned Halloween, I brought us back full screen for the moment, so I want to see how good your memory is. So I happened to be watching some old Bugs Bunny cartoons, and I watched one with uh, Witch Hazel.
Right.
Okay, and she needed a rabbit for her stew that she was making.
Right.
Okay, can you remember? Can you recall what the other three ingredients were?
Was this the one with the genie who at the
No,
end? That wasn't the one where magic mirror on the wall.
no.
Who's the ugliest one of all?
This is the
No.
one.
All
This
right.
is the one where there's a a guy that you think is Shakespeare, but it turned out to be Witch Hazel's old love, who didn't, who apparently was supposed to pick her up on a date back in the day, and was supposed to go, went to apartment 2B, and Witch Hazel said, "I didn't say 2B," and so it was 2B or not 2B.
To be.
Okay, all right.
If there was another, the only one I recall with Witch Hazel is the one I mentioned a few moments ago. So if there was another Witch Hazel cartoon, I unfortunately have led a childhood where I missed out. I don't remember or recall that particular
Well,
episode.
well, in her cookbook, I will just tell you what the recipe was. It required uh, 10 butterfly toenails, okay, a cup of rattlesnake venom,
Uh-huh.
one rabbit's foot, and 3 cups of sifted dust.
Oh,
They were
dear
clever.
me.
They were clever folk. Those Warner Brothers cartoon
Oh,
producers
I,
and
Knave,
cartoonists.
I, Knave, am cirrhosis of the
Of what?
liver,
Right.
Duke of Ellington,
Count of Basie, Duke of
Count of
Ellington,
Basie.
Earl of
Oh,
Sirloin of Beef. That was the other one.
yes,
Sirloin of Beef.
yes.
All right, let's check out we were talking about snow. So WPC through the next 72 hours, not really a whole lot going on here at all. Just the probability of at least 2 inches in the western half of Colorado and some of the higher tops, and just a couple of patchy areas here and there. So even what's showing up on the radar is not producing, nor will it be producing very much, at least over the next 72 hours. And with respect to 7-day rainfall, might as well update this map because this was that was the old forecast from this morning. So 7-day rainfalls, liquid precip, I should say, liquid precip in the Northeast from eastern PA through New Jersey and through much of New England, except the far north. It looks like anywhere from a half to 3/4 of an inch being indicated. The earliest shot for that's going to be later Sunday night and Monday. A little bit more widespread rainfall in the Gulf states, particularly the central and western part of the Gulf states, where we're looking at anywhere from a half an inch to areas in purple as much as an inch and a half to 2 inches in some places. The northern Rockies down into the Wasatch Range, looking at what will appears to be what will be probably mostly snow in that area, and some of the precip amounts here, liquid-wise, as much as an inch and a half of liquid in some of the mountaintops in Idaho. And of course, for the last several days, we've been seeing them putting tons of rain in the Pacific Northwest, and that also continues with several to many inches being forecast there. You know, I just want to really quickly take a look Joe, at the polar vortex at the in the stratosphere, because I saw a number of things today from Dr. Judah Cohen, among others, talking about signs that the polar vortex is getting another one of these warm air disruptions, and that the vortex is actually in the process of dropping southeastward and stretching out in the longer range. And
Right.
I've been looking at the last few runs. I'll just put the 12Z run here and show you that indeed that's what the models are forecasting, and you can see the stretch is right in here. It kind of stretches out, and then the body of the vortex, which we are. It seems like it's always sitting somewhere near the coast of the north coast of Siberia. The whole body of the polar vortex drops down into northern Canada, and not just touching northern Canada, but pretty far south into northern Canada. So um, this would argue that sometime around maybe say after the 10th of November, we could be going into a colder pattern again. Something that lasts for a while. We'll have to, of course, see how this all evolves and whether this forecast is actually correct. The one thing I would just point out to everybody that you should also be paying attention to, aside from whatever's going on way upstairs, is it's a good idea to just watch what happens in the West Pacific. What we keep looking for is any sign of a typhoon or a tropical storm that winds up recurving and going up toward the Aleutians. And we actually have one today that's passing east of Japan. That's heading for the Aleutians to become a fairly deep storm there, but it doesn't really sit around very long. It goes into the Gulf of Alaska and kind of crashes into northwestern Canada. There are a couple of other tropical systems in the long range. It again doesn't look like we're getting any. It doesn't look like right now that the models are showing anything from that regard with respect to typhoons recurving, because when they as we talked about before, when they recurve east of Japan and they head up toward Alaska or to the Bering Sea or to the Aleutians, under certain conditions, they would create a deep trough around the longitude of Hawaii, which pumps up a big ridge in the west, which forces a deep trough and a cold flow of air from Canada into the eastern part of the United States. So that's something I think we need to keep paying attention to. Right now, it doesn't look like much is going on, at least in terms of what the GFS is showing, but we're talking 2 weeks out, so who knows where the models are going to take us.
The Climate Prediction Center, for 6 to 10 and also 8 to 14 days, has well above normal probabilities, temperature-wise, for
Would you want to
our
share
part of the
that?
country. Well, why not? I'd be happy to.
Okay, so let me turn it on.
Just
it's on.
Undisable me, and there we go.
You've been
so
undisabled.
Yes, and we'll show that to you in a matter of moments. And again, this is the Climate Prediction Center, NOAA's division for long-range forecast. Now, I'm going to show you first the 6 to 10 day outlook. And if you're hoping for any kind of cool temperatures in the foreseeable future, it doesn't look like it's happening. Let me just do this and that. There you go. Voila. Take a look at that, Joe. Now, we have for the lower Great Lakes, for the northern Ohio Valley, mid-Atlantic, and much of the Northeast, above normal. And when we speak of how much above normal, the probability forecast is 80 to 90%, which means that they are fairly, they being the forecasters at NOAA's Climate Prediction Center, are fairly in a good agreement that we're looking for a spell of temperatures that are going to be well above the seasonal norms. This looks to me, if this does verify in our neck of the woods, I think next week, this is for November 1st through the 5th. This is for a week from yesterday. This would be for next Tuesday, all the way out to a week from Saturday, that 5-day stretch of above normal temperatures. This looks to me, Joe, like we could have more than a few days of, let's say, 60 or 65 degree temperatures, maybe even higher, maybe something similar to what we've had over the last couple of days. And according to the average temperature, average maximum temperature chart that I have here for Westchester County Airport, normal high temperature in and around the lower Hudson Valley, somewhere in the 56 to 59 degree range for early November. This suggests to me that temperatures could be 5 to maybe 10 degrees above normal if this verifies for next week. And beyond that, let's say for the 8 to 14 day outlook, whoops, there we go, still above normal, although not quite above in terms of percentages. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. So still all the way out to the 9th of November, a 60 to 70% probability, according to the Climate Prediction Center, of above normal temperatures here in the east. And it also looks like that, according to CPC, it is going to be rather dry. Take a look at the precipitation for 6 to 10 days. They have near normal right along the immediate coast, but go inland a ways and it trends toward below normal probabilities for precipitation. That's for the 1st to the 5th of November. And then as we go to the 8 to 14 day outlook, we look at below normal up and down the eastern seaboard. So it's looking like we're heading for a rather warm for early November and rather dry for early November. Meanwhile, while we sit here with warm and dry weather, look at what's happening over most of the rest of the country. In fact, it looks like about 80% of the country will be in the above normal precipitation pattern 8 to 14 days out, including and especially the Pacific Northwest, where in Washington and northern Oregon, they're probably going to be seeing, again, above normal precipitation. So,
and with below normal temps in the northwestern, and let's say where it's all below, you certainly now have to look at the probability that there will be some significant snowfalls that will occur in the Rockies, I would think,
that's true.
With a deep trough in the western part of the U.S.
That's true. So there you go. So if you want snow and you're tired of waiting for it here in our neck of the woods, you might want to get a plane ticket and head west, because that looks like the place where the region where it's going to be cold, and it could conceivably be a bit on the snowy side as well.
As a snow lover, I would say let the trough be in the west right now, because it really doesn't do you a whole lot of good to have it in the east. It just doesn't. Not at the end of October and the beginning of November.
Right.
But one piece of good news, even though it is a small data set, for the snow lovers, they can look at the fact that we haven't seen any snowflakes in the month of October, and if you look at the small data set of years where snow was observed in the month of October, those winters are not exactly robust snow winters. So you've avoided that, okay? You've avoided getting snowflakes in the month of October. So now we can move on to see what November has to say, which I think is probably, in terms of the scope of the pattern, I kind of think November is probably more important than October is.
And it looked like for a while we were running something like 4 degrees below normal in the month of October, but with this recent spell, or these recent spells of unseasonable warmth, we may be coming back to near normal, or maybe even a bit above normal. I have not had a chance to see what the situation is regarding temperatures so far this month, but we're coming to the end. The end, of course, will be on Monday with Halloween, the 31st of October, and then we'll know.
Correct. All right, let's take a look at what Mr. GFS has to say tonight. And get myself out of the way. I'm getting good at remembering to take myself out of the frame so you can see the maps. Why don't we start? Let's instead, starting with the surface, we'll start with the upper air. So we, of course, have been in this ridge position here, which really didn't do us a whole lot of good because there was a hanging trough left over from last week's cold trough in the east that has kept much of the northeast and mid-Atlantic states in gloom and doom the last few days. But now, of course, we are kicking a cold front through. You can see the short wave with that is lifting up into Indiana and Illinois, in Ohio, and up into Canada. So here we are at Wednesday evening. You can see this upper low that's dropping down to the west of New Mexico. That's the system I pointed out earlier with the rain coming into the Pacific Northwest. Some ridging here in the eastern part of the United States, but again, temperatures on the cool side. This system's going to take a southern route and then sort of lift out and weaken a bit as it approaches the East Coast. For Monday, yeah, the ridge builds in the east, Joe, and at least it would seem to me that unlike this time around, it is more of a dry situation. I have to tell you, quite honestly, I never liked days like the last, like yesterday and today, when it gets up into the 70s and this time of year, and the dew points are in the upper 60s. In the month of October, for some reason, it feels so much worse to me than some of the summer heat and humidity days. I don't know why. Maybe it's because we've actually had so few of them this fall for a change of pace. But it doesn't look like that's how it'll play out next week. Once we get rid of the system for the first part of the week, it'll be warm, but it'll be reasonable. And you can see the next deep trough that drops into the west into California and Nevada. That's a nice looking upper low that drops down into the southwest, and then that swings eastward. But that ridge holds. Now we're at Sunday, November the 6th. Big ridge in the eastern part of the United States, and still troughing off the west coast. And then toward the end of the latter part of the forecast period, you start to see some the flow going back to the northwest from Canada, and more deeper troughing forming in Canada, in central Canada, and pushing into eastern Canada. So maybe the models are beginning to pick up on the idea that, we'll have a ridge in the east probably till around the 9th or 10th, and then we're going to flip into another pattern right after maybe around the middle part of the month. Let's give it some room and a few days to evolve. So around the middle part of the month of November. I think that seems to make sense to me.
And I did check, and it turns out that at Central Park, to date, right now, the month of October is running 1.9 degrees below normal. However, if we have a few more days like we've just had, which is not going to happen because we're going to go back to more seasonable conditions over the next couple of days, I think what's going to end up happening is that overall we're going to see October below normal, but not like a whole heck of a lot, maybe like a half to maybe a degree below normal, as opposed to where we were at just about a week or 10 days ago when we were running like 4 degrees below normal. And let me again stress, the all-time record for a cold October goes back into the 1880s. I think it was 1883, where October averaged something like 8 degrees below normal. Things were certainly a lot colder back then, before steam engines and industry started taking over, and the mean temperatures started to go up. But that's how so far the month of October 2022 looks, 1.9 degrees below normal.
And nothing much has changed here in terms of the outlook. Looking at it from yesterday, sometimes I look at these runs and I'm thinking, am I looking at the one from 2 days ago or 3 days ago? But no, not at all. Our front comes through, high builds in. Nice day tomorrow with that nice high building into the eastern lakes, and then it kind of makes its way up into northern New England and then just sits there for a day and a half or 2 days. And in fact, the axis of the high is pretty far to the south. So if you're worried about low clouds and fog getting in with an onshore flow, I don't think that's going to happen this time around. It might happen further south, say in southern Virginia, North Carolina, because the models continue to develop a low off the southeast coast of the U.S., and don't be shocked if this winds up becoming a tropical depression or a tropical storm or a subtropical depression or storm. But it just meanders there for a few days, ultimately to get picked up and absorbed by whatever's coming out of the southwest, which really doesn't look all that impressive. And you can see it brings in some precip Sunday night and some on and off showers on Monday into Monday night. Nothing crazy here. Still, actually, some lingering showers into Tuesday before we finally get to some dry weather for the second half of next week. And as we showed, indicated when Joe was showing the 6 to 10 day outlook with that deep troughing in the west next week, it opens the door for the possibility of some significant snows in the Rockies. And you can see here by the middle of next week, there's a nice looking low there in southeastern Wyoming, and looks like it could be some important snows for, say, Montana and Idaho and Wyoming, and then eventually maybe into the Dakotas, particularly North Dakota, as that low tracks way to the west, way to the west. And yeah, Joe, it's hard to see other than whatever happens early next week with rain, with any kind of rain shower activity. The rest of next week looks dry, and we're holding on to a ridge position, maybe even that weekend going into election day looks to be dry in the east. So got a nice long stretch of dry weather there.
Now, we were talking for the longest time. GFS was certainly alluding to the possibility of some kind of a major Category 4 or even 5 tropical cyclone down anywhere from Florida to the Gulf of Mexico to off of the Florida coast out near Bermuda, whatever. And looking at today's map, there hardly seems to be anything like that anymore. I guess,
well, there's a hurricane. You know, it's still forming a hurricane. It just takes it straight west into Central America. It's it gets it
is
down.
That the same?
It gets
That's
it down
the same
to
one.
Yeah, it gets it. I have it on the screen now. So it's one of the issues here is the fact that, and the Hurricane Center does acknowledge both systems, by the way. The thing that's off the east coast of the United States is creating, troughing here. There's probably going to be some shear issues. So this thing can't go this way if there's a storm sitting out here. So a ridge winds up building in between, and then this thing just winds up going straight west and staying way to the south. So after all the consternation of the model doing, bringing these Category 5 hurricanes to Puerto Rico and the Dominican Republic, and then, a couple of runs off the east coast of Florida, and then a couple of runs in the Gulf of Mexico, ultimately we're going to wind up with something that's going to go straight west into the southwest Caribbean as possibly a hurricane. Once again, maybe into Nicaragua, and then coming out on the Pacific side. The Atlantic system, to me, with the cool, dry air that's going to be lying just to the north of this, it's going to be hard to see how this thing is going to be able to develop. In fact, there's so much, there is quite a bit of westerly wind shear that it's going to be having to deal with by the time we get to late in the week and early next week out there in the southwest Atlantic. And the Hurricane Center pretty much acknowledges that in their outlook, saying that it could be conducive for a subtropical depression that could form as the system moves northward in the next couple of days and then just meanders around in the southwest Atlantic. And then upper level winds are forecast to become less conducive by the end of the weekend, which I agree with. On the other system here, a 50% chance of development, by the way, in the next 5 days, 40 in the next 2. And the Eastern Caribbean system, 0 in the next 2 days, but 50% in the next 5. Environmental conditions are forecast to be conducive for gradual development, and a depression could form early next week, while the system generally moves west or west-northwest. And I think I'm pretty confident that given the upper air setup that we have, that is the way it will play out. And we still have. It seems like it's going to be we're at 11 named storms. 14 would be average, and for a La Nina year, all the grandstanding and cheerleading for what was supposed to be a gangbusters above normal season, those forecasts are going to be hung out to dry, because it's going to get progressively tougher to get, unless they form somewhere in the central Atlantic. It's going to be progressively tougher and tougher as each day goes by to even get to the normal number.
And I'm just checking here the almanac and looking at past years. Of course, we're coming up now on the anniversary on Saturday of two events, two major events that arrived within 1 year of each other on the same date. On October 29, 2011, we had the incredible early snowfall, and in fact, in many areas north and west of New York, including yours truly's house, 1 to even as much as 2 feet of heavy wet snow, which caused tremendous tree damage. I mean, outside of my house that evening, it sounded every so often like somebody was shooting off rifles, but it was really tree limbs and tree branches being snapped off by the heavy duty snow. Little did we know that exactly 1 year later, the snow came on a Saturday. The following year was a leap year, so instead of Sunday, the following year, the 29th, was on a Monday, and that was, of course, Hurricane Sandy, which really was not a hurricane officially when it made landfall along the central New Jersey coast, but made landfall along a path so unusual that it brought a tremendous onshore flow of water into places along the south shore of Long Island, Coney Island, all kinds of devastating conditions occurring in many localities because of the unusual track that Sandy took relative to the tri-state New York City area. So there were 2 years in a row where for many, Halloween had to be put on hold because certainly there was no Halloween on October 31st, 2011, with all the snow up in the suburban locations. And the following year, no Halloween on for most areas of the tri-state region because of the damage that was done, both in terms of flooding or in terms of wind damage by Sandy. So thankfully, I'm so happy, Joe, that this year on the 29th of October, which is Saturday, it's going to be the antithesis of those kind of weather days in that it will be beautiful blue sky, bright sunshine, and temperatures hovering within a few degrees of 60. Nothing like those 2 years, 2011 and 2012.
Yeah, those are generational events. You see them once every 25 or 50 years, or even 100 years. So we've seen them already. So we got them out of the way. So hopefully we won't have any generational events to deal with. But if we do, Joe and I will cover it here on the Joe and Joe Weather Show. And on that note, it's time for
Briller Jeopardy. I've got the questions, so let me just go and pick them up from Mr. Briller. And if you're wondering, the questions from Briller Jeopardy are provided to us by the chairman, Scott Briller, who produces them in a special hermetically sealed envelope. So now what I have to do. Where is the envelope? I'm trying to find it.
You mean that the information is not derived from Compton's Encyclopedia?
Oh no, you mean Compton's Pictured Encyclopedia is the source of preparations for the question and answers used on Briller Jeopardy. And now here once again is Art Fleming.
Art Fleming.
You know, if you watch Jeopardy, and as I'm sure many people do, if you watch Jeopardy, as the opening scene, they're showing you like a collage of different events from the past. There's one that's in black and white, showing the game board appearing behind a curtain that's splitting apart. And I'm trying to is that Alex Trebek or is that Art Fleming?
No, it's got to be Art Fleming. It must be. It's got to be a tribute to Art Fleming. I actually, as a kid, had gone to see Jeopardy a number of times at the NBC studios in Rockefeller Center.
Wow.
It was quite cool. But it was a curtain. Da 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 da.
And before we get into Briller Jeopardy, 1986, on this day in 1986, a Sunday, a steady light rain during the daylight hours, which amounted to 0.64 inches, or just about 2/3 of an inch of rain, forced postponement of Game 7 of the World Series at Shea Stadium. This followed the incredible comeback by the Mets last night in Game 6 when a ground ball went through the legs of Red Sox first baseman Bill Buckner in extra innings, giving the Mets an improbable win. So the Game 7 today was rained out, and it was finally played tomorrow, which, if I recall correctly, was not the greatest day. I mean, it was kind of cloudy and kind of dreary, but everybody was happy at the end because the Mets won and they beat the Red Sox, and that was 36 years ago. And Still waiting for the Mets to pull that off so I can smoke my cigar. Anyway, hi, Joe. Continuing our theme for this week for Briller Jeopardy category for the following 10 cities, and we'll do 5 tonight and 5 on. Well, if we do 5 tonight, we do 5 tomorrow night, which is Thursday night.
Right.
Which is what is the date that they average their first inch of snow? So we'll do 5 cities tonight. The first city tonight.
Okay, so I'm sorry. You were, just to be clear. So we're still on the average date for the first inch of snow, which is what we've been doing the last 2 nights. So now we're going to do 5 more. Okay, gotcha.
Absolutely. So the first city tonight is Seattle.
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 Well, we had Portland last night, and Portland was December 26th. So I'm going to say for Seattle, December 20th.
Okay, and let's see, who else is out there with...
Johnny Quest says January 7th. Leon Probitsky says December 2nd. Northern Grace says December 20th. Craig Carlberg, December 29th. Tim, Latex Dreams. November 12th. Frank Riccio, December 22nd.
22nd.
January 4th for Joe Z. Mark DeCara, December. Has anybody hit the date yet? December 6th. No. December 15th. Chris Alley, Debbie Carroll, December 14th. Jacqueline Baxter, December 30th. Paul Roman, December 16th. Mark D42, December 26th.
He got it.
December 26th.
Which was the same as Portland, Maine.
Portland, Maine.
Portland, Oregon.
Portland, Oregon. I'm sorry. I meant Portland, right. Oregon. Yes. Okay. Next one, Joe.
Flagstaff.
Arizona. Flagstaff, Arizona. Now, they get deep troughs in the Southwest. I'm going to take a shot here. I'm going to say October 29th.
Okay.
I'm going to say October 29th. Craig Carlberg says December 18th. Chuck Cardillo, November 3rd. Northern Grace, November 10th. James Volpe, November 13th. Chris Alley, December 10th. No, Steve LaPointe. We're now on to Flagstaff, Arizona. November 15th for Leon Probitsky. November 1st for Jacqueline Baker. Alicina Iwazi, December 3rd.
All right, I'm going to give you all a hint as to what the date is. Are you ready?
Yeah.
That was my hint.
You didn't say anything.
No, but what did I do?
Oh, Veterans Day, November 11th.
There you go.
I didn't see the salute. 11th. So November 11th is the answer. Okay, I wasn't too far off. What's next?
Denver, Colorado.
Denver, Colorado, from Quick Weather Central in Denver, Colorado. Well, we all know that a couple of years, was it last year or 2 years ago, we had the September snowstorm there. I am going to say early, so I'm going to say October the 13th. We've got October 2nd from Leon, the 29th for Craig Carlberg, Owen Daniel, October 23rd, Johnny Quest, October 15th, Chuck Cardillo, October 23rd, James Volpe, November 6th, Joe Z, October 5th, Jacqueline Baker, October 11th, Chris Alley, the 15th, Frank Riccio, the 17th, Brian Cater, October 10th, Alicina Alwazi, November 16th, Northern Grace, October 18th, Mark D, 42, October 26th, Debbie Carroll, October 25th, Mrs. Rayo, October 8th, Howard Hassel, October 15th, Mark DeCara, October 30th, Steve LaPointe, November 6th. Miss Fowlerite says September, she's the first year she lived there, they had snow on September 11th. Mike Azara, October 7th. Michael McGuire, November 5th. Anybody get this yet, Joe?
Well, you said Alcina Al-Zawari?
Yes.
You said October 16th.
No,
and
she said November 16th.
Well, who did you say that was October 16th? You did say that there was a date. Somebody said October 16th.
Well, Chris Alley said October 15th. So did Johnny Quest.
Okay.
And I said October the 13th.
All of you were dancing around. It was October 16th.
October 16th. Okay, what's the next one?
I can't believe I could say this at this point in my life. I can't believe that I could actually say that I have been to this city, Anchorage, Alaska. But I have. So what was the average first date of the first inch of snow in Anchorage, Alaska?
Oh, you know what? I'm not overly familiar with the goings on in Alaska weather, outside of whatever, it's in the wintertime and something it's happening up there. So it'll be I'm going to just make a complete guess, and I'll say October the 5th. I'm probably wrong, but I'll say October 5th.
Well, Craig Carlberg says September 30th. Chuck Cardillo says October 30th. Johnny Quest, September 12th. Leon Probitsky, another September date, September 30th. Alcina Alzawari, September 8th. I think that's a little early. I'll say even for Alaska. Howard Hassel, September 27th. John Sachs, 77, October 5th. Michael McGuire, November 1st. Jacqueline Baxter, September 1st. Ms. Spallerite, September 12th. That, I will tell you, is about as close as anybody has come so far on this particular list. And I'm checking. Ms. Spallerite is the winner by default, I guess, for getting
well, what's
as
the
close
date?
as October 15th.
Oh.
And she said October 12th, which is also my mother's birthday.
Okay.
The final one for tonight, number 5, St. Louis.
San Luis. St. Louis Mo. I'll say St. Louis isn't a funny spot. Oh, God. I will say November 27th.
Okay, well, Craig Carlberg says December 8th. Chuck Cardillo goes all the way back into October 27th. Christina Pedia says her mom's birthday is on October 13th. That may be true, but that's not right for the first inch of snow in St. Louis. James Volpe, December 1st. That's and Michael McGuire, December 1st as well.
Joe Z said December 7th.
That's a day that will always live in infamy, but it's not the right one.
And Northern Grace said December 5th. So did Frank Riccio. So
once again, you're all dancing around the date. For St. Louis, the date in question is December 3.
December 3rd. Okay.
Yes.
And on that note, we will save the next 5 cities for tomorrow, which is Thursday, and usually our last show of the work week. So, Mr. Rayo, you go ahead and say goodbye.
I'm going to say goodbye and also mention, I believe that Chuck Cardillo mentioned early on in the proceedings that his son is still in a lot of pain. The doctors up here think that he has pulled a muscle, but it's also he's also testing positive for COVID. So we want to wish his son all the best and speedy recovery. Otherwise, we will be back tomorrow night. So we all want to say have a good night to you all. And once again, Joe, I'll see you tomorrow night at 7:35.
All right, everybody. See you tomorrow night. Good night, everybody.